The church bells chimed softly in the distance as a pristine white limousine rolled to a halt on a narrow country road. The morning air buzzed with anticipation, yet inside the car, chaos reigned. Anna, the bride-to-be, sat clutching her bouquet, her perfectly applied makeup betraying signs of distress. "This can't be happening," Anna exclaimed, her voice trembling with desperation. "We're going to be late for my wedding." The driver, an older man with graying hair and a perpetually calm demeanor, scratched his head in frustration. He stepped out, popped the hood, and fiddled with the engine, only to return moments later with a grim expression. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The engine won't start. I've called for a tow truck, but they said it'll be at least an hour." Anna's heart plummeted. Months of meticulous planning, dress fittings, and coordinating every tiny detail had led up to this day, and now it was all unraveling before her eyes. She glanced at her phone, which buzzed with a flood of "Where are you?" texts from her bridesmaids and the wedding coordinator. The bridesmaids, dressed in pale lavender gowns, peeked out from the limo, whispering among themselves and throwing worried glances at Anna. Tension hung heavy in the air. Just as panic threatened to consume her, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. A rusty green pickup truck pulled up beside the limo, its tires crunching on the gravel. Out stepped a man in grease-streaked overalls, a rag slung over his shoulder. "Looks like you're in a bit of trouble," he said, his voice calm and steady. His eyes, kind but weathered, held a glimmer of concern. Anna hesitated. "The car, it won't start, and I can't miss my wedding." The man, Jake Henderson, tipped his cap and moved to inspect the engine. "Let me take a look. I can't promise anything, but I'll do my best." Jake owned a modest garage on the outskirts of town, where he spent most of his days repairing everything from rusty tractors to sleek sports cars. He had learned the trade from his father, who had once told him, "Son, fixing cars is about more than wrenches and bolts. It's about fixing problems and helping people get back on the road." Life hadn't always been kind to Jake. A few years back, he lost his wife, Sarah, to cancer. Her death left a gaping hole in his heart, one he filled with the hum of engines and the rhythm of his tools. Though he carried the weight of his grief, Jake never let it harden him. He had earned a reputation for being dependable and kind, someone who would go the extra mile for a neighbor in need. That morning, Jake had been en route to deliver a car to a customer when he spotted the stranded limo. Something about Anna's distressed expression struck a chord with him. It reminded him of Sarah, how she used to light up a room with her smile, how she would always encourage him to lend a hand whenever he could. Jake worked swiftly, his hands moving with practiced precision as he examined the limo's engine. "Looks like the fuel pump's gone bad," he said, his voice tinged with regret. "It's not an easy fix, but I might have a spare part back at the garage." Anna's face crumpled. "How long will it take?" Jake hesitated. "If I hurry, I can be back in 40 minutes. But there's no guarantee it'll work." Tears welled in Anna's eyes. She thought of her fiancé, Mark, waiting for her at the altar, of the guests seated in the church pews, of the vows she had rehearsed countless times. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do whatever you can." Jake nodded. "Stay here. I'll be back as fast as I can." Jake's truck roared down the country road, his mind racing as fast as the engine. His garage was 15 minutes away, and every second counted. As he drove, memories of his own wedding day flooded his thoughts. Sarah's laughter echoing in the small chapel, the warmth of her hand in his as they exchanged vows. Back at the garage, Jake rummaged through shelves cluttered with tools and spare parts. He found what he was looking for, a slightly worn but functional fuel pump. Grabbing his toolbox, he jumped back into the truck and sped off. When Jake returned, Anna's anxiety was palpable. She stood by the roadside, clutching her bouquet like a lifeline, her bridesmaids huddled nearby. Jake wasted no time, diving under the hood with single-minded focus. The sun climbed higher in the sky as Jake worked, the sound of metal tools clinking against the engine filling the silence. Anna watched him with a mixture of awe and gratitude. She couldn't understand how a complete stranger could be so selfless, so determined to help her on the most important day of her life. Finally, Jake straightened up, wiping his brow. That should do it. Give it a try. The driver turned the key, and the engine sputtered to life. A collective cheer erupted from the bridesmaids, and Anna's face broke into a radiant smile. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've saved my wedding." Jake smiled, his expression humble. "Just doing my job. Now go. You've got a big day ahead." The limousine sped down the road, and Anna arrived at the church just in time. The guests, who had begun to murmur in concern, erupted into applause as she stepped out, radiant and composed. Her fiancé, Mark, stood at the altar, his face lighting up with relief and love. As Anna walked down the aisle, she felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the ceremony that was unfolding as planned, but for the stranger who had made it possible. The vows were exchanged, the rings slipped onto trembling fingers, and the church echoed with the sound of joyous cheers. Yet, in the midst of it all, Anna's thoughts kept drifting back to Jake. A week later, Jake was back at his garage, the familiar scent of grease and motor oil filling the air. He was working on an old pickup truck when he heard a car pull up outside. To his surprise, Anna stepped out, dressed in casual clothes and holding a basket of baked goods. "Anna," Jake said, setting down his wrench. "What are you doing here?" She smiled warmly. "I wanted to thank you properly. You didn't just fix a car. You saved my wedding day." She handed him the basket, which contained an assortment of homemade treats and an envelope. Inside was a heartfelt letter of gratitude and a gift card to a local restaurant. Jake's eyes softened as he read the letter. "You didn't have to do this," he said, touched. Anna shook her head. "You didn't have to stop and help a stranger. But you did. People like you remind us that kindness still exists in the world." For the first time in years, Jake felt truly seen and appreciated. As Anna drove away, he stood by the garage door, a faint smile playing on his lips. He knew he'd made a difference, and that was enough. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Stories like Jake's remind us that even the smallest acts of kindness can create ripple effects of joy and gratitude. Join us as we celebrate everyday heroes and inspire hope in the world. Together, we can make a difference, one story at a time.